Welcome again, everyone. This is Kevin from Mercer. I'm your facilitator for this session. So for this breakout session, we're talking about leading and coaching in a hybrid world. Welcome. We have two great speakers today. So let me quickly introduce them before we head into this session. To start off, we have Ruchira Chowdhury, who is a leading executive coach and author. The other person is Brian C., who is the head of total rewards in Hong Kong for Mercer. Before we get started, just want to share with you, anyone that is actually looking for the Mandarin simultaneous translation, please go ahead to use the same app that you were using for the previous session, but enter the code breakout5 as the code to get access to the translation. With that then, without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Brian.
Thank you, Kelvin. Hello, Rashia. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And then thank you for selecting this breakout session. It looks like that we have 44 attendees at the moment, which is great. I hope you have been enjoying most of the day already, and you're not getting too tired as you move into the later afternoon for this. But this is a very interesting topic, and I think it's very tropical as well. Today we have the special speaker, as Kelvin just introduced to us. But before we jump onto the fire chat, I would like to actually do a polling first. I want to hear a little bit from you to kickstart. So, Kelvin, would you please pull up the polling question we have? Yeah, so it would be nice for us to get an understanding of how many of you have a coach or mentor at the moment. Okay, I see the numbers are going up really fast. That's good. Okay, 78%, 80%, almost there. Okay, great. Let me end the poll and then share the results. Okay, looks like not many of us have a coach and mentor at the moment. Okay, 73% no, but okay, about 30% would have a coach. Interesting. So I don't know. After this session, it might change your mind, and you might want to get a coach or mentor, right? Okay, so although most of us here don't have a coach or mentor at the moment, but I would just like to ask, when we talk about coaching, what would be the first word that come out of your mind? You can just type it in the chat box, and let's see what people think of. First reaction. I don't want you to spend a minute to type a paragraph, but just a word. Improving, nurturing, be better, that's a good one. Keep coming. Asking questions, okay, growing. Personal development, consulting, sharing. Wow, they're all unique. Okay, very good.
Growing, yeah.
Growing as well.
Yes.
Guide, yeah. Confidentiality, okay. Awareness, challenging, wow. Very good. All these keywords, I think they're all very much related. So let's get started. Charula, maybe I'll start with the first question from the why first. Right? You spent many years in the HR consulting. You have your own boutique strategic firms, and then you moved to coaching as a professional coach. Can you share with us, the why and how you would go down to that path?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And we now have over 60 people in attendance. So thank you for being here. It's a long-winded story, right? I allude to it in my book, which I've just written, Coaching: The Secret Code to Uncommon Leadership. So I'll try and make it a bit brief for you. I was a consultant, right? I worked in an organization much like Mercer. It was called Hewitt when I joined it, then morphed into Aon. And I worked in the industry for many years as a strategic advisor. And my mainstay was organization design and a lot of M&A integration. That's my sweet spot, right? So I always thought of myself as a hard-nosed consultant who did strategy, org design. And I was going through a very turbulent time in my career in 2013. I used to run strategy for a large financial services organization based out of Singapore. And the toxic work culture, and I guess the lack of any kind of coaching, any kind of enablement, and we'll talk about that a bit, made me realize that it was a very debilitating experience for me, right? And remember, by contrast, I've had bosses, I've had clients, I've had lots of people who've been fantastic mentors and coaches to me, right? Different. And we'll talk about the difference as well. So I know what good looks like. But here I was at this organization realizing that I was in the senior leadership team, but I wasn't getting any kind of, all the words that you guys put on the chat, the growth, the nurturing, the improvement. I wasn't becoming a better version of myself, which is what coaching should be doing for me, right? And so I was at Crossroad, and I got a call from the University of Chicago, the Booth School of Business, which is where I studied. I did my MBA from there. And they were looking for an executive coach. So they said, oh, come on, we're launching this big program in Asia for the first time, and come and be the resident coach. And I just said, guys, I have a specialization in strategy and private equity. I can't coach. Coaching is soft and fuzzy, and there's no beginning and end. So that's how my coaching journey started, serendipity. And they said, listen, you're certified. You have a whole bunch of certifications. This is a good time. This is a safe space. This is your own business school. Come, give it a shot. Because you are one person who understands the classroom learnings because you've studied. And so will these C-level people when they come for a short leadership program. You can marry those classroom learnings to a leader's personal trials and tribulations, right? The challenges that somebody's going through. And so I said, what have I got to lose? I was having such a terrible time, and this was a good time to exit. And I went and joined the University of Chicago, and I became the resident executive coach as an experiment. I thought the experiment would bomb and all of that, but many, many years later, clearly I've embraced the profession and I've written about it. So in a sense, I realized coaching was really untangling those big knots in your head, right? We all have the answers within us as leaders, but because there's so much going on in our lives, we're fighting fires, we have revenue numbers to meet, we have people to lead, there's so much, right? So these thoughts, they become big, big knots in our heads. And what a coach does for you is help you really distill that, right? Untangle those knots and form them into distinct patterns. So you get more clarity and more capability as you go forward. So that's a coaching journey.
Nice.
So Singapore's a little village. It's a joke, of course, but everybody found out. So other business schools started asking me. So now I do a lot of this for NUS, for SMU, IMD Lausanne, and a couple of other business schools.
That sounds very interesting. I guess you did touch on a little bit of what coaching means, right? And then we saw of these words from the audience, but I guess I'm not as expert as you in this area. So oftentimes we mix up what a coach is versus a mentor, right? How do you define these things? Like, how would you describe coaching from your perspective?
So, if you go to Google and you punch in coaching, you'll get, I think when I was writing my book, 800,000 hits or so. And now, I don't know, this is a year and a half ago. So I'm sure the numbers changed dramatically. And yes, coaching means many different things. But in the context of our discussion today and what I think good coaching should be, that a leader should do or an external coach should do, coaching is the act of maximizing your current performance and your future potential, right? So how good you are today vis-a-vis how good you can become. That's what coaching should do. And the way you do that is through a series of self-enabling and non-directive conversations. The keywords are self-enabling, which is you enable yourself, and non-directive, right? So you don't tell people what to do. You ask them powerful questions. The whole premise of coaching is that you don't give wisdom, you don't give advice. You ask powerful questions so that your coachee can find his or her own answer. They can find their own unique ways of doing things. It's not your playbook. The coachee writes his or her own playbook. And that is also the key difference between a mentor and a coach. I know we use the poll to ask coach or mentor, and in organizations, and even before I embraced coaching, we use these terms interchangeably, right? And you have a coach, this one's a mentor. But there is a stark difference. And I encourage people to get both, but do understand that they both satisfy a different need, and they add value in different contexts, right? A mentor could be someone who's older, typically, been there, done it, could be an ex-client, could be an ex-boss, could even be, a family friend, someone you look up to. This person has a lot of influence, the influence that can even open doors for you. But remember, this person is telling you what to do because he's been there, he or she has seen the world, and they're saying, listen, this is what made me successful. This is my advice to you. So you go to them for advice, and they offer that advice by watching you from the balcony. This relationship can take a long time. It can be over many, many years. Coaching is not watching you from the balcony. Coaching is on the dance floor. This person is in your ecosystem. He or she will roll up the sleeves and give you real-time feedback. So this person truly needs to understand what you do day on day and help you become a better version of yourself. Greater capability, greater clarity, more self-awareness, and of course, confidence to go forward. That's what coaching is.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more. But I think many of us here, including myself, we manage a number of people in the real workplace, right? So when you talked about being a coach is not about telling so much, right? Not instructing the others, but as a manager, sometimes you put on a hat that, you tell them what is the right thing to do. And at the other time, do we, switch our channel and become a coach? That's different. Yeah. How would you describe, how do you balance that?
So, leadership is hard work. It is balancing many, many fronts. And increasingly, you cannot truly be a good leader without being that coach that takes people along in the journey. And as you rightly said, Brian, it's about wearing different hats at different times. There is a time to be nurturing. There is a time to be empathetic. There is a time to be directive. But at the essence of all of that, you also have to be that leader that truly elevates your people, right? You want to build leaders for tomorrow. That should be also primary responsibility of any manager, regardless of which level you are, whether you have a large team or a small team. You do want your people to become a better version of themselves. So you have to find that sweet spot between asking and telling. But it's very, very important that we don't constantly tell our people what to do, that we harness their collective intelligence, that we give them the space to think for themselves, that we create a safe space and say, hey, it's okay to fail, but I need you to try, right? So that's, I guess, the whole premise of coaching. And it doesn't come easily. In surveys, you ask many senior leaders, you ask people who are individual contributors, you ask people who lead small teams and say, hey, are you good coaches? And most people will say, yeah, I'm a fantastic coach. But the reality is very different because, through school, through college, wherever, business school, the kids or those that shine the brightest are those that have the answers. And the best managers should always have the answers, right? We believe that we need to solve our people's problems. When they come to us, we need to tell them what to do. So we don't think we're doing anything wrong. When we block half an hour in our diaries to have a conversation, we spend the time giving them our wisdom, what made us successful. But coaching is different. Coaching is a lot harder. It also takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of mind space because you're not giving them the answers. Sometimes you don't know the answer yourself. You are helping them uncover that answer and say, okay, Brian, how would you do this? Okay, so tell me, right, great, big, client is not answering our call. This is not happening. What would you do differently? And that's coaching, right? And I'm making it very simplistic for you, but I think in a sense, we have to let go. We have to surrender that control. And even when we know the answers, sometimes we have to contain the urge to give them that answer so that they can discover it for themselves.
Right. As we go into this hybrid working mode, right? I guess it's even harder nowadays, for us to, connect with our colleagues. I guess it's easy in a way that you have a lot more meetings, virtually. Everything you need a phone call, you have more catch up, but those are not the same, as in person. And how does that change the whole coaching skills or the coaching techniques?
That's a great question. In fact, when I started writing the book, there was no COVID. So a lot of people said, oh, what about virtual coaching? And I said, oh, I think virtual coaching is a bad idea. right? You should try and be with the person in the room, see the nuances. And of course, by the time the book came into print, it was March 2020 and the world had changed. And I had to go back and add this chapter, right? Because, our whole paradigm had changed. I mean, there was me saying, oh, don't do virtual coaching, but that's all we need to do. I guess, on a more serious note, a lot of academic research is telling us that on the one hand, our employees want the flexibility to work from anywhere, but they also crave human connections, right? We're also missing that ability to connect with each other. And for a manager, it's so much harder now to be able to find that time to touch base, to make time for those quiet leaders, those that are not participative, those that might be struggling personally or otherwise. Through a Zoom call, it's not the same. Patchy Wi-Fi, our realities are different. Some of us have barking dogs and screaming kids. Mine is at school today, fortunately, but all of those things, right? So our worlds are different, and we might all be in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat, really, right? So a manager, especially in these times, has to truly wear on that empathetic hat and put yourself in the shoes of the person. You need to make time for those bite-sized conversations. You need to find the space to touch base with your people even more often. And it doesn't have to be a video call every time. It could be a simple WhatsApp message. It could be a text message. You can choose your medium, but you need to make a concerted effort, not to constantly check in on your people, but to check on them, right? You need to have more conversations around grief, around burnout. And more importantly, you need to build reservoirs of trust. Study after study says that my manager does not trust me. My manager is breathing down my neck. I don't have the space to do my own thing because my personal and my professional life is colliding now. I have to be always switched on, right? One Zoom meeting to another Zoom meeting, then work to be done, and then it's nightfall. I don't know where my day goes. But as a leader, you need to don that hat where you build those reservoirs of trust, where you understand that empathy is important and that you become that fantastic role model as you take people along in the journey, and find your moments. Peter Drucker said, when you look out of the window, see what's visible, but also see what's not visible. So in that Zoom meeting, see what you see when somebody's talking, but also pick up the nuances. If someone's not speaking up, or you see that someone doesn't participate in any meetings, find the time to touch base with them separately. That's also coaching. Coaching is not just a 30-minute conversation that you have to discuss performance. It's everything that you do as a leader to take your people along in that journey.
Right. Okay. So I saw one question pop up in the chat box. We plan to have these at the end, but I think, it's a great question, and maybe I'll just, dive right into it. So with all these unknowns, in the environment that we live in, most of us don't have the right answer. Then how do we coach? What language do we use during the coach?
And I think it's a great question. Often that also stops people from coaching because I don't have the answer, right? So the pandemic has shown us something. Nobody could have the answer. Not you, not me, not the most senior leader in any organization. The whole premise of coaching is that you are harnessing the collective intelligence of your people, that you surround yourself with people that you think could have valuable opinions, that you seek diversity of opinion. So I guess bottom line is, coaching is also about asking and saying, listen, I don't know it all. It's about being vulnerable in front of your people and saying, I want to give you the clarity, and this is what we can do for the next few weeks, but I don't know beyond that. But I'd love to get your views. I'd love to get your ideas. Coaching is about soliciting diversity of opinion. Coaching is about saying that I don't have all the answers. And organizations that have thrived, not just survived this crisis or are surviving, are those that have taken inputs from their people, right? Those that have pivoted overnight, changed from high-end fashion garments to masks or sanitizers. If you look at some of the leadership interviews, they didn't do it by themselves. It's not an idea that popped up in their heads. It was the people in the organization. Many of them brainstormed and brought these people together in little, small task forces and teams, and people came up with these suggestions.
Yeah, I guess this also goes into the objective of, why embedding coaching for an organization, right? That would be to maximize someone's potential. Absolutely. Rather than, what do you do tomorrow? Or what do you do next quarter? Are you
Exactly.
getting the numbers, right? So this is in a more long-term, sustainable way, better for the individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the more capable you make your people, you give them clarity, you give, I mean, this is a model that I have put together in the book. It's called the 4Cs model. So what does coaching do for you? And funnily, you know, as I was writing the book and I was supposed to be this coach, I couldn't find the answer anywhere. I looked at lots of HR journals, I looked at lots of sites, coaching sites, and it said, when you coach somebody, it increases your ROI, it helps unleash their creative potential. And these are big words, right? But at the basic level, what do you do when you coach somebody? Especially as a leader, when you invest the time in those that work with you, that work for you, what are you really achieving? And I call it the 4C model. It's a 4C plus model. It has 4 cornerstones, right? The first is capability. When you coach somebody, you make them more capable. When you make them more capable, it also frees up your time to be a more strategic leader, right? You give them clarity, right? We talked about those, you know, untangling the knot and giving them, forming those patterns. The more clear you are, you're able to see the different paths before you. It gives you confidence. So many of us here know our stuff. We know what we have to do, but often we hold ourselves back because we're not sure that we are capable of achieving it. A good leader coach will give you that confidence to move forward. And the last thing is consciousness. Consciousness is just self-awareness. We all know that good leaders have to be more self-aware. We're not perfect. Knowing about your blind spots and how to conquer them is great. And all of these 4Cs can come alive with culture, a culture of coaching. Organizations that consciously, you know, consciously promote, nurture, hire leaders that want to build leaders at other levels are those where coaching thrives and flourishes.
Yeah, just now you touch on culture. I want to dive into this a little bit further. So if I, you know, many of us here are, you know, in the HR fields, right? We're in-house HR. For example, if I am the head of HR of this very traditional company, which doesn't have a strong coaching culture, there's no coaching mindset, what can I do? You know, what do I sell to the leadership that, you know, this is important, and how do I embed it as part of my culture?
We're in a Mercer conference and you're a rewards leader. So it can't be a fuzzy conversation. So we have to make it tangible, right? Coaching
Yes.
has to be tangible. I guess my take on that is, you know, coaching doesn't have to be fuzzy. It has to at the end of the day help you achieve your business objectives, right? And it's all right for us to say, hey Brian, be that leader coach. We can have all these rara conferences and tell our people that coaching is fabulous for them and for the organization, but that's not enough. We can bring in experts who give you coaching skills, but that doesn't change the narrative, right? Because it's one thing to be intrinsically motivated. You're a good leader and you want to create more leaders, great. But how do you translate this individual coaching capability, right? Or coaching skill rather, into an organization-wide capacity? How do we ensure that every leader in the organization, or leader, those that lead, somebody who leads big teams, an individual contributor, everybody embraces coaching? But how do we do that? And so to the point is, you have to sort of weave it into the culture of the organization. In fact, I say not just the culture, you need to go beyond the visible norms. You need to integrate that into your DNA, into your organizational architecture, which means how do you reward people, right? What you measure what matters, right? So when at the end of the year, your KPIs or your goals also reflect how many new leaders that you built, how many times to coach somebody, you are clearly will be incentivized to coach, right? You need to have the mechanisms. When you hire people into an organization, you don't hire just for pedigree or past experience. You hire for attitude. You hire for potential. Does this individual have it in him or her to build more leaders? Does he or she enjoy leadership? Is he or she a people's person? See, attitude is hard to come by. We all know that skills can be nurtured, and in the end you can learn them, right? So the way you hire, the way you promote, the way you measure people, but and also the way you celebrate individuals as culturally. If you're constantly rewarding those that are building teams, that are producing more leaders, that's the right signal that you send out. And the best leaders are role models, right? My book has case studies from Microsoft. So a lot of it is about Satya Nadella and how we rebuilt a completely broken Microsoft. A lot of it has to do with culture and how he changed the dynamic. He changed the bell curve to a very different way of rewarding people. And to a large extent, you reward those that are constantly nurturing and building others. They have a framework, in fact, it's called coach care model. So every leader, regardless of the level, is expected to coach others. Care is really the bit I talked about, empathy. You're expected to demonstrate that you care for your people. And the last thing is model. You model the right behaviors. And, it's a 10-page case study. I've condensed it into a short paragraph, but it's quite an interesting one.
Cool. Okay, so let's say if I want to, start coaching today, how do I know I'm a good coach or not? At the end, coaching is, more or less one-to-one, right? And am I being a good coach? Like, how do I get that? Or is there some kind of tools or things that I have to learn and pick up and self-reflect?
I mean, you can read about it. There's lots of coaching models, but I think at the very essence is anybody can be a good coach if they want to be, right? Some of us for us, it comes more naturally than others. As we say, we have more EQ, right? So some people are gifted with EQ in generous measure. Some of us are not. But if you truly believe that coaching is something that you should do for your people and for yourself, then you need to accept that, hey, I have to get started on this journey. And a lot of coaching is not just about learning something new, it's also unlearning, right? You have to let go of a lot of your beliefs. You have to let go of a lot of the way you've been interacting with your people. As I was saying earlier, you have to stop telling and move from telling to asking. It's hard work, by the way. It doesn't come naturally. It's uncomfortable. These are courageous conversations, and it takes a lot of effort. So first things first, have a coaching mindset, which means agree that you need to change a lot about yourself first. Second, you need to consciously build those reservoirs of trust with your people. Unless they trust you, they will not open up to you, right? So that's key, that forming that relationship of trust that goes both ways. And I think the third thing is think about it as a growth mindset, which means you should have the belief that anybody can change, right? Often we just decide that somebody who's been an average performer or not a good performer is hard work, right? You don't want to invest time. But as a leader, you have to suspend that judgment. That's why I said unlearn and say, listen, I'm going to invest that time and energy in this person. In the end, it may not work out in the fashion that I expected to. Maybe the person will thrive somewhere else, but you need to, as a leader, give it your best. And you have to truly believe that anybody can change. I think if you follow that mantra, anybody can be a fantastic leader coach.
So I think this wrap up the session really well. I noticed we only have 5 minutes left. So maybe Kelvin, if we look at the floor, do we have any other questions from the audience?
I think one of the questions, I think you guys had just answered it in talking about how to motivate managers to take time to coach their team, especially in this hybrid environment. Is there anything else you want to add on top of that?
I just say that the work from home brought us some very unique challenges, and many of us have truly been leaders that have very quickly pivoted and transformed how we interact with our teams in the virtual world. The hybrid world or the blended work reality adds another dimension of complexity, right? Now you will be faced with a situation where you'll have people in office and you'll have some team members who will not be in office. You will need to find that sweet spot between giving people the flexibility that they want and also the structure that they should have and the human connection. As a leader, I would urge you to think more about inclusivity. How do you ensure that nobody feels excluded given this new work reality? That we take everybody along in this journey, that we continue to elevate these people as we build our numbers, as we grow our organization, we also grow our people, if not in equal measure. I guess to me, the whole premise of coaching is that you shine the light on your people and you shine brighter as a leader, right? When you elevate somebody, you go higher. So think about yourself as the rudder and the compass that is helping people really up the ante on themselves or become a better version of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I see a very practical question just popped up. As a role of HR, in coaching under this hybrid environment, how do you measure the success, and how do you know is looking good? How do you define and measure this?
Ah. No easy answer, but as an
Yeah.
organization, as a leader, can you look at some of your leaders and say, where have the people that work for them landed up? How well are they doing? How many of you have produced more leaders in the system or outside the system? There's a book on super bosses that just talks about that the best leaders and the best bosses always have successful prodigies, right? So look at engagement scores, look at how many people are staying on in the organization. Those that you want to stay, are they staying on? And are they growing with you in the organization? That tells you a lot about the culture of the organization. This whole sort of saying that we don't leave organizations, we leave bosses. A good leader coach who enables and builds others will always have people wanting to work for him or her. And I think that's a true measure.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Yeah, I see a comment just pop up that our audience would buy a book. You created The Secret Code of Uncommon Leadership. That's great news.
I showed
okay.
you.
Yeah, right here.
Excellent.
Okay.
How do I find a mentor and coach? Somebody's asked me very quickly, right? Mentor, please find yourself. Many organizations try to do that. Sheryl Sandberg has a whole chapter in Lean in saying it's a disaster if organizations try to pair you up with people. It has to be organic. It has to be someone you know and the person knows you, believes in you. So truly look about in your ecosystem or outside. It could be, for me, it's been my professors at the University of Chicago. It's been an ex-client. So think. And this person is giving you advice, and you really should want that advice from someone like that. A coach, if you don't have a boss who's coaching you, then ask for that coaching. Coaching, find somebody, a colleague, a boss, your boss's boss, but someone in your ecosystem. If you're not getting it, then seek it. Of course, you can hire external coaches like me, but my premise today is that every leader should be a coach, and every leader should do their bit to build the next line of leaders.
That's a lot of wise words. Thank you, Ruchira, for your time. I think, Kelvin, we're about at the time.
Yes, we are. And I would like to thank everyone for joining. And at the same time, just to give us a quick feedback of how the session has went. And thank you again for both of you for sharing your thoughts. The other session in the live mainstream will be starting in about 5 minutes. So please feel free to drop off after you finish the survey and head back to that session there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for the time again. Have a great day. See you.